Hey guys, this video is going to be a book review of Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, yet another Cosmere book. If you click on the thumbnails around my head, you can see my reviews of other books by Brandon Sanderson that, yeah, I've loved all of them. All of them. Warbreaker is set on the shard world of Nalthis, a world of colours, darkness, and tense national relations. The peoples of Idris and Halandrin are on the verge of a war that will not go well for either side, but particularly for Idris, the last holdout of the remaining royals from Halandrin after the Many War several generations ago. Only the marriage of a princess of Idris to the god king of Halandrin can prevent the war that is to come, possibly. However, that is why Ciri has come to the heathen city of Tetelia, where biochromatic magic is practiced, and the godlike people known as the Returned rule. On Nalthis, all living things have breath, sort of inherent magic that's also part of the people's souls. Breath can be used by biochromatic magic to create wonderful and terrible things, such as the lifeless, preserved corpses that are used as soldiers by the Halandrin, but are viewed as abominations by the Idrians on behalf of their religion. Ciri is not the only Idrian princess in Tetelia, however. Her sister Vivenna, who was originally intended to be the God King's bride, has also come to the city, half out of a sense of duty to rescue the now imprisoned Ciri, and half out of a desire to cripple the Halandrin if it does come to war. Our other principal players include Lightsong, the minor returned god of bravery, and Vasha, a mysterious awakener with mistakes in his past to atone for. Will war break out between Idris and Halandrin, or will our protagonists prevent it? For a good hour or two after I read this book, I was convinced that it was the best book that I had ever read. Now, while that glow has died down quite a bit, and I am able to analyse critically once more, I still feel that this is one of the most complex and nuanced books that I've ever read, and I really enjoyed it. It deals with complex subject matter such as nationalism, history, ethics, and most of all, purpose. So first I'm going to talk about characters, which were amazing. In particular, I want to draw attention to both Ciri and Vivenna's character arcs. In most books in the fantasy genre, looking at you, George R.R. Martin, if there's going to be a female character who learns how to fight, they will generally be more tomboyish, more interested in physical activities, and more interested in being defined towards authority, like Ciri is. While if there is going to be a female character who is going to use words and politics to change the way things go for them, then they will be more traditionally feminine, concerned with fitting in and fulfilling female functions to the best of their ability, which is more in Vivenna's wheelhouse. However, this book subverts that quite well, as Ciri is the one who has to use politics to influence the story, and Vivenna has a lot more to do with action and violence than anyone would have expected. It doesn't just subvert gender roles, but also genre roles, if you know what I mean. And I felt that both characters didn't have to compromise their femininity to actually accomplish their goals. The closest that they came to it was when Vivenna had to put aside her dresses and wear trousers to fit in more. And even that isn't that bad. I found the principles of biochromatic magic to be quite fascinating. However, it also seemed rather strange that all the characters, including Vasha, didn't really know how a lot of it worked. Vasha is immortal and incredibly knowledgeable, and so you kind of imagine he's got a pretty good idea of how this all works, but apparently he doesn't. He states as much pretty near the beginning of where he becomes a major character in the story. I really do look forward to a sequel that explains how a lot more of these things work. In particular, I would really like to know where the connection with colour comes into it, because clearly there's something with the dyes or something, but is there more to that? And on the topic of biochroma, Nightblood is a fascinating idea because he's a talking sword, and in most fantasy genre he would be really intelligent and would be able to just be a guide to the main characters, except he's really not intelligent at all. He has a good memory and some really interesting thoughts, but he's quite stupid. He really is. He's kind of like a mix between a child and a superhero. He doesn't really understand very much, but he's incredibly powerful and dangerous. And personally, I feel the ethics of using him are rather hazy, to be honest. I have to say that my favourite character was Lightsong, who was clever, charming, and witty in just the right ways that made me really, really engaged in his story. And then, of course, there was his actual story arc, combining where he had to find out who he was with, like, the regular politics of the court, and then finally sacrificing himself to save Ciri and the kingdom. Really, really good. I found the history in the book to be really, really interesting as well. It was quite complex and interesting, while also having varying views, such as the varying views of history on Vasher, who had various names: Kalad, Peacegiver, Talaxin, and was one of the 5 scholars, and yet it also covered a hell of a lot of differing views, because he was all one person, and yet history spun him off into various different characters, just going off what the other characters know about these different figures, and it kind of shows just how complex a situation history actually is. There's only one real thing I can actually fault the book on, which was that the true instigators of the climax, Bluefingers and the other Pankal scribes and servants, they felt too hidden in the story. They were an interesting bit of flavour up until the end of the book, where it turns out they were the main antagonists all along. In hindsight, they make sense as the antagonists. However, they kind of felt a bit too hidden in the narrative. You were far too focused on the priests being the bad people, whereas these folk really just didn't really come at until that very end part. Their involvement makes a lot more sense after you've read the book and after you've read the annotations on Brandon Sanderson's website. Basically a DVD commentary on the book, but online. But that sort of extra content should not be required to read the book. So that is a weakness. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about Denth, who is a really fascinating and interesting character, and I really, really want to know more about him. It's a shame that he died at the end of the book, but I'm really hoping that when Brandon Sanderson does the sequel to this book, that we'll find out more about him. I'm really, really hoping that. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this book. It was fantastic. I loved its characters, its narrative, its whole plot. It was just brilliant, and while it had its faults, I just really loved it. Tell me in the comments below what you thought of this book. I would love to know what you think of it. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you remember to like and share it and subscribe to my channel. Click on the thumbnails down below to see other videos by me. I will see you guys later. Bye.